So, a conversation we've had multiple times on the show, on the lives. Will Alabama have a 1,000 yard wide receiver? Jay, the last time that didn't happen was 2017 until last season. Today, we aim to answer that question. Before we jump into it, I have to hear from all of you. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. Y for yes, N for no. Jay, let the people know where they can find all of your great content. And then let's get into it.
Hey, it's Jay Smith with Unfair Sports. Thank you, Todd, for having me as usual. Love having these in-depth conversations around teams. It's nothing but fun whenever we get together.
Yeah, man. This is one I'm excited about because Alabama's offense last year, I have famously complained about it time and time again. You have had the misfortune of listening to my complaints about Alabama's offense last year, and it wasn't the talent. I have been forthright to you that I'm even in the group that says that Alabama wide receiver room last year wasn't as problematic as a lot of other people thought they were. Now the drops need to be cleaned up. There's no argument here. I think the talent is there, but it was the first time since 2017 that Alabama didn't have a 1,000 yard wide receiver, and the first time since 2002 that there wasn't a 1,000 yard wide receiver or a 1,000 yard running back. I think history isn't going to repeat itself because it typically doesn't happen to where they have back to back years of that stat. But there are some interesting names to talk about in the Alabama wide receiver room. One name that instantly comes to mind for me, and my name to watch for all of you watching this right now, is Malik Benson. Comes in as the number one player in the nation out of community college. And Jay, the thing that stands out to me is whenever Bryce Young was doing his pro day work, they had him throwing passes to Malik Benson, who hadn't been there but a few weeks, and already they were like, no, we want you running with Bryce with all the NFL scouts out there. To me, that said a lot. What were you thinking when all that came to the surface?
No, I agree with you 100% on that. It's Malik Benson coming from JUCO and immediately walking in and they're saying, "Hey, we want you to catch passes from Bryce Young as he prepares to go pro." That shows a lot of confidence in him to be able to run the routes needed and the timing that's needed to make Bryce Young look good. Because let's be honest, pro days are built to make the player look good, and so they try to make every scenario and every situation as optimal as possible so that they can stand out when it comes to the draft grade. And so bringing in Malik in there like they did kind of shocked me. I figured they would go with someone that's kind of tried and true and understands how to play the role with Bryce Young, like a Jermaine Burton or maybe Ja'Cory. Was it Ja'Cory
Yep.
Brooks? Yeah, you would think it would be one of those two, being that they caught, 30 something catches apiece from Bryce Young, they wouldn't know how to run those routes and be prepared. But that tells me some confidence is there from the leadership there at Alabama that this kid's probably going to be something special coming this season.
Yeah, and I love the points you made because I don't think it's an indictment on a Ja'Cory Brooks or a Jermaine Burton, a Kendrick Law, Kobe Prentice, and Isaiah Bond. There are a lot of names to look for, but when I watch Malik Benson and I start looking at his game, the first thing that comes to mind is polished. He is an incredibly polished wide
Mm.
receiver prospect and very smooth. And so that's why I didn't think it was that big of a stretch to have him in that position. I think it was surprising, but I think that's exactly why Alabama fans need to be so excited. Now, the question I get asked all the time, and I'm really interested in hearing from you on this, will Alabama have a 1,000 yard wide receiver? I lean towards yes, just because historically speaking, it doesn't happen too often where they're down in that category for too many years, right? They have a lot of talented guys, but the number one argument I get in pushback is this, and then I'll give you the number two. But the number one I do find
Mhm.
compelling. There's a lot of names in that room. They're going to eat carries from each other. That's a very real argument. Completely understand. The second is it's a new quarterback. That one I understand. I agree with, but we've seen 1,000 yard wide receivers come from a new quarterback at Alabama. So
Mhm.
I'm less worried about that one. The first one to me, though, that's a real argument. What do you think when you hear that point?
Yeah, no, and it's a good point because when you look at this, the quarterback room there at Alabama's young. You got Ty Simpson's a redshirt freshman. You got Jalen Milrow, who's technically, as a redshirt sophomore, is the old head on campus. And that's 3 years in college for him. Well, this will be his third year in college. And so, but then you go back at the top Buckner, you go back to Dylan, can't
Dylan
pronounce his
Lonergan.
last name,
Lonergan,
Lonergan.
yeah.
There you go. And then bringing, with Ty Buckner coming in as a transfer, you're still looking at a very young quarterback room and now going into a new system. And so even with the youth that you have and Milroe being the veteran out there, you should see a 1,000-yard receiver at Alabama this coming season. Now, you made the perfect point. The point I was going to make, but we were talking about this in the green room, is this: you guys got a lot of receivers to feed, and so with so many mouths that you can feed, it's going to make it tough to key in on one person. Now, the one thing I knock on wood for in this conversation is going to be health. That's something that you all have dealt with over the last few years. Your top guys falling basically to injury, and then once that injury comes down, kind of sees a little bit of disarray in the wide receiver room. But I do think with the Tommy Rees offense, you'll see a lot more stability in comparison to what you saw from the Bill O'Brien regime and his setup. These wide receivers will be better prepared. They'll have a offense that's a lot simpler to run, not as complex as an NFL setup, and they should be able to produce some numbers that you all are looking for. And I can see at least one person getting 1,000 yards.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would lean towards it happening, but I do think there's a lot of credence to the argument of, hey, Malik Benson is otherworldly talented, but Kendrick Law is a guy that really looks to take those next steps. He's very gifted. He's going to eat into them. So too is Isaiah Bond. So too is Kobe Prentice, Ja'Cory Brooks. I think that's a guy everybody needs to circle his name. He's going to be vying for those. And we haven't even started talking about the tight end position yet. So that's a very real argument, one that I give credence to. But the last point I'll make, Jay, is something I love you that you just said. And that's the Tommy Rees offense, because everybody always says, but it's going to be Alabama's offense that's run, not Tommy Rees's. And they're correct. But every offensive coordinator has added their little wrinkles into the Alabama offense. Bill O'Brien's was route modifications, hot routes,
Mhm.
changing the routes on the fly based on defensive coverage. That's great in the NFL. Very, very, very difficult to do at the college level, at the level that the Alabama wide receivers were asked to do it. I don't think that that's going to be the case anymore. I think it's going to be much more simplified. Things are going to be quicker. I think that bodes well for all parties involved. So, Jay, I think it's a good chance that Alabama has 1,000-yard wide receiver this year, and I think that they're going to have a lot of guys turn heads.
Yeah, they will. And like you mentioned, Ja'Cory Brooks is the one that I've circled as the player to watch this coming season. I mean, he's shown some pretty good progressions as a young receiver with his first year playing 7 games, 15 catches, 192 yards, and then going into his second year as playing last season. He played 13 games, 39 catches, 674 yards. To me, the natural move now is to get 1,000. And even talking about Malik Benson, who had 44 catches for 1,000 yards in JUCO his freshman year. I mean, it's huge numbers, and that tells you that, he's got explosive capabilities. If only on 44 catches you're getting 1,100 yards receiving, that's a massive number. It's ridiculous if you really think about the averages on that. But I do see that. I think Ja'Cory Brooks is going to be the guy that steps up and moves from that 600 yards and goes into the 1,000 range with about 60 catches. He'll have more passes thrown his direction and the opportunity to truly eat. And he may end up being the number one guy if he plays to the potential that we're expecting. Like I said, barring injury, we're hoping that none of that hits anybody. But if healthy, I can see him being the one that immediately hits 1,000 yards. And then I can see Malik Benson following right behind him with 900, maybe to 1,000 right on the tail of him.
That'd be look, and I don't disagree at all, because one thing we need to acknowledge about Ja'Cory Brooks, he is Mr. Clutch. When the moment is the brightest, that's when he shows up, i.e., that Auburn catch that won the game. That's just kind of been his MO. And because of that, you would think that it would carry over into his junior season when the moment is the
Hmm.
brightest, when all the scouts are watching, boom, that's when he's going to light it up. I think that's going to happen. But what I'm really curious about is hearing from all of you watching this video. Who do you think will be the 1,000-yard wide receiver? If you think there is one, if you don't, let us know. If you think there is, what name? Is it Malik Benson, Ja'Cory Brooks, or is it one of those guys that are going into their true sophomore years? Can't wait to hear from all of you. Until next time, Jay, let the people know where they can find you one more time.
Yeah, hop on YouTube, Unfair Sports. Just search for us there, and then there you'll get direction on where to find us, wherever podcasts are downloaded and listen to. Todd, thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. And until next time, see you.